Hello, I'm Rick Stivers with YoungMartin'sReels, and today we're going to be dealing with a Berkley number 4200. It's open face spinning reel, and I'm going to start off by removing the spool. First off, let's go ahead and run it through a quick operation. This reel really does operate beautifully. There's nothing wrong with it that I can tell, except that it is a little sluggish. It takes a little extra effort to spin it, but it's a pretty nice little reel. It definitely needs new line. I'm going to take the line off of it, and I decided that even today I'm going to show you how I go about taking the line off of this reel. Okay, we're going to start off though by pulling the spool. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take the handle off. You just turn it clockwise and it'll come right off. Set it off to the side. This would be a good time to go ahead and lubricate the handle. Put just a little bit of oil inside there. And another couple of drops down in the end of it. There went the chatter. It no longer chatters when you spin it. Okay, now we're going to take off the side plate. Okay, all three screws are identical, so you can just keep them together over in one little pile. Take the side plate off. It's pretty clean inside, but it is caked up full of old grease, which is probably what's making it so slow. So we're going to start off by removing this screw right here. Notice that this upper hole up here is not used. Well, let's see if I can get it in the picture. There we go. Notice that this upper hole up here is not used. The screw goes over here, and the long part of this crosswind block is facing away from the spool. So we're going to take that screw out for the crosswind block. Notice that the screw does have a lock washer on it. You're going to make sure that that gets back in. And with that out, you should be able to pull the axle assembly straight out the end. Alright. Now with that out, your crosswind block should come out. It's pretty well lubricated. It's just old grease. With that out, we're now going to take this nut off. That should be, I hope, since that's what I got, is a 14 millimeter, and it is. Okay, take that out. Now you notice that there's a locking plate here. Let's take that locking plate off. And with that off, now the rotor assembly will come out. Notice that the stud for the crosswind block is now directly behind this spur gear. That's not necessarily always going to be that way, but if it is that way, you're going to have to rotate it just slightly to get it over and out of the way so that you can remove the pinion. Pinion slides out. There you go. And with that, if you deactivate your anti-reverse, there's activated, there's deactivated to the back. Now you can slide your main gear out without it affecting your anti-reverse. Okay, with all those parts out, we're going to do a quick cleaning. I'm not going to talk during the cleaning. I'm just going to scrub and clean up all the parts. We're going to do it in fast forward, and I'm going to back out just a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, since it's not really important for you to see anything close up. I'm going to back it out and I'm going to quit talking and I'm going to scrub everything up. All right, now most of the parts are all nice and clean, and we're going to come back in a little closer and get back to work putting this back together. We're going to start off with the main gear, putting it back in. Notice that there's a spacer on the back side here, a shim. Make sure that you have it installed. I like to use reel oil on this shaft going through for the main gear because it allows it to move a little faster than grease does, and it tends to not slow the reel down as much. So that's why I use oil there. Now, before I install the gear, the main gear, I want to go ahead and install some reel grease on the teeth of the gear so that we have good lubrication. I happen to be using Penn reel grease, but it's not any reel grease is probably pretty good. Try to stay away from household greases like Vaseline. Years ago I did the whole Vaseline thing, and I went out on a nice winter day and went to fish, and all of my reels were practically useless because the Vaseline had stiffened up so much that you couldn't hardly turn the reel. Now on the back right here, you're going to be tempted to put grease here for the anti-reverse, but it's not necessary, so don't put any grease in there. You can go ahead and leave that off. We've now oiled the shaft, we've greased here, and now, real quick, let's go ahead and grease right here because our crosswind block is going to be rotating in there and sliding. Slide the main gear back in. At this point, we have now cleaned this pinion gear and we're going to re-grease it. And again, this is a rotating surface. Some rotating surfaces I like to use reel oil on rather than grease. We're going to slide that up in there. Like that. Okay, with it up in there, one thing I didn't do was remove this bearing, but what I do want to do, it's a roller bearing inside there. I do want to put a few drops of oil down in there for that bearing. That'll help make it run nice and smooth and quiet. Okay, now the ball bearing is lubricated. We are ready to reinstall the rotor. Slip the rotor back on. With the rotor on now, you've got this key. Let's install the key. It fits in. Let's flip it over. It's got a beveled side and it's got a straight flat side. Go ahead and install it with the straight flat side down and a nice smooth gearing portion facing up. Just that's the way they designed it, so let's go ahead and put it back that way. The flat side goes flat up against the rotor, And now let's go ahead and put the nut back on. Again, this is a 14 millimeter. I use a deep well socket because you can't get a wrench down in there. There, okay, that's reinstalled. The bail trips, like so. All right, that part's working just fine. All right, now that main gear is not going to fall out because that pinion is holding it in place. So you don't need to try to put the handle on just yet. What we're going to put in now is the axle shaft. Now, while I was doing the cleaning, the end of the axle shaft here came off. That's fine, it goes up inside there, but it's got a lock point here. Let's go ahead and grease this. Okay. Slide it back on. That'll help keep that moving free and make that lock button move in and out much more freely. Okay. I cleaned it out up inside there. Now this is a sliding surface, it's not a rotating surface, so for that I'm going to suggest that we go ahead and use the grease. But you don't need a whole lot of grease. Matter of fact, I probably got a little more than I need on this. Try to get some of the excess off. Because too much grease is your enemy, not your friend. There. Alright, with the grease on it, go ahead and slide it up inside. Let's rotate this around so that our crosswind block is over to the side. Let's set the crosswind block back on and maneuver this so that the crosswind block will line up and we can put the shaft in. There we go. Now bring it back. See the hole here? Alright, that hole is where our screw goes in. So line that up. Remember, this is the screw that had the lock washer on it. Get the screw aligned with the hole and screw it in. Before I go too far, and forget to tell you, because I did forget already to tell you when I put the main gear back in. When I was doing the cleaning, I found on the post that the crosswind block sits on, there's a little small collar. And that small collar had fallen off and was laying over here on my paper towel. If you go back and look in the video, you might see it in the video. But there's a little collar, and that collar fits onto that post that makes it so that it's a tight fit on the crosswind block there. Okay, once you've got it together, it should operate just like that. All right, at this point we have everything inside that needs to be done. Let's go ahead and check the anti-reverse. It works. Okay, turn it off. Ready to put the side plate back on. Notice that there's not tremendous amounts of grease inside this reel. There's just enough grease to keep everything properly lubricated. And since you really should be going into these reels at least once a year, maybe once every other year at the most, which somebody obviously hasn't been into this one, and you don't use a whole lot of grease. At this point, we're ready to put our handle back on. Remember, it's going to wind in the direction that you would normally reel, or wind your reel. Okay. Hold the rotor tight and go ahead and tighten the handle. Good. Okay. That's all working good. At this point, we've got a spool. Somebody put electrical tape on here years ago to hold the line. And what I like to do for taking this off And we're going to do this at super high speed when we get down to it. I put a little slip knot on there, and I slide that over a bolt, and with all the old line removed, I'll now scrub this spool up, and we'll clean it. Go ahead and clean out the drag, although it doesn't look like it needs to be cleaned. It looks in very good condition. But let's go ahead and pop the spring out, and just careful, keep your finger on the spring so it doesn't go shooting across the room. Okay, clip comes out. Then comes the washer. Then comes the drag washer. And that's it. That's all that's inside there. Spray a little penetrating lubricant in here. Okay, you got the clicker on the bottom, and we're going to add a drop of oil to that. Okay, I just discovered something on this reel that I didn't know. Along the base of the spool here is a wire wrapped in felt, almost like a pipe cleaner. And it wraps all the way around, and then it comes back through and it twists back onto itself and gets tucked in over here. I don't really understand so much the purpose of that. It's on the bottom side of the spool, so I'm not really sure what it does, but it's there. If you see it, you might not want to grab hold of it like I just tried to do and try to take it out of there. Wipe off your excess oils, clean out the inside of the spool. Okay, now you're ready to reinstall your drag washer, which could be a leather, could be a rubber, but this one is very dry, and my guess is if you've got one of these old reels, yours is very dry too. So I'm going to lubricate it good with some cow's drag grease, and I went rushing right out and bought some of this drag grease for my reel because everybody was recommending, hey, use cows, it's going to do so much more for you, and it probably does. But what I did find out later is regular reel grease also can be used. It's just not quite as good as cows, because cows has extra polymers and stuff inside the grease that allows it to operate without getting stuck. That came out so dirty the first time that I decided to wipe off all the old grease and put some more on here. That looks much better. Okay, go ahead and insert your drag washer and insert your top metal washer, and then go back to putting in your wire clip. Make sure to hold it down because it will go flying if you don't. Okay, make sure it's all the way seated inside the groove that it's made to sit in, like that. And you're ready to reinstall it back on the reel. Reinstall your nut for your drag. Okay, let's tighten it down. Tighten it down some more. A little more. And now we have a solid drag that will stop just about anything, and now loosen it back up a little bit. Okay, there we go. and hear the click. All right. Now, with this properly functioning, in order to take the spool off, you just push the button and pull it out. That's why we lubricated that button earlier. Locks in place, push the button, comes out, good. And it locks in place. Okay. And here we have the Berkley 4200. Before I go, I would like to give my thanks to Dennis over at Secondhand Tackle on YouTube. If it hadn't been for Dennis, these videos that I create wouldn't be nearly as good. Dennis has, I just finished watching a video that Dennis did on the Berkley 420 fishing reel, not the 4200, but the 420. And about the only difference that I saw in that reel that he did and this reel is some different designs, such as which side of the bail the tripwire is on. I did notice that, and it's just a little bit different in design. So, but internally, it all works exactly the way his does. So another great video to go watch is Dennis's video on the Berkley 420. And if you like what you see here, please hit the like button. If you wish to subscribe, please do. I could use all the viewers I can get. And I'm Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels. Thank you.